Have you ever wondered what happens when a government keeps secrets from its own people? What if those secrets break the law and the president himself is caught in the middle? In the 1980s, the United States faced one of its most shocking political scandals, the Iran-Contra affair. Secret weapons were sold to Iran, money was funneled to rebel groups in Nicaragua, and a web of lies stretched all the way to the White House. But how did it all happen? Who were the people behind it? And what were the consequences for the president, his administration, and the country? Today, on History Untold, we're diving deep into this scandal, explaining it in a simple, easy-to-understand way. By the end, you'll see just how complex and controversial the Iran-Contra affair really was. If you love uncovering hidden stories from history, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to History Untold so you don't miss our next story. What was the Iran-Contra affair? The Iran-Contra affair was a major political scandal during President Ronald Reagan's time in office. Key officials in his administration secretly sold weapons to Iran, even though Iran was officially considered an enemy of the United States and was under a strict arms embargo. But the story doesn't stop there. The money made from these weapons sales didn't stay in Iran. Instead, it was secretly sent to support the Contras, a rebel group in Nicaragua. The Contras were fighting against the Sandinista government, which leaned left and had support from the Soviet Union. So why was this a big problem? Because Congress had passed the Boland Amendments, which specifically banned any more funding for the Contras. In other words, the Reagan administration broke the law to secretly fund a war. Why did it happen? There were two main reasons behind these secret operations. 1. Freeing hostages in Lebanon. In the 1980s, some Americans were being held hostage in Lebanon by Hezbollah, a militant group linked to Iran. The Reagan administration thought that by secretly selling weapons to Iran, they might convince Hezbollah to release the hostages. 2. Supporting the Contras in Nicaragua. The administration strongly opposed the left-leaning Sandinista government in Nicaragua. But Congress had passed laws banning any funding for the Contras, the rebel group fighting the Sandinistas. Instead of stopping, the administration created a secret operation to continue giving financial support to the Contras. To carry out these plans, a hidden network called the Enterprise was set up. Weapons were sent to Iran through Israel, while the money made from the sales was secretly sent to the Contras. All of this was kept hidden from Congress and the American public. Key players in the scandal. No scandal is complete without the people behind it. Let's meet the key players in the Iran-Contra affair. Oliver North. He worked on the National Security Council and was at the center of the operations. North helped organize the arms sales to Iran and made sure the money reached the Contras in Nicaragua. John Poindexter, Reagan's national security advisor. He approved North's plans and helped coordinate the secret operations. Caspar Weinberger, the Secretary of Defense. Weinberger opposed breaking the law, but he was still caught up in the scandal. Manucher Ghorbanifar, an Iranian arms dealer. He played a key role in arranging the weapons deals between Iran and the U.S. Ronald Reagan, the President of the United States. Reagan said he did not know all the details of these secret operations, but his administration was deeply involved. How the scandal was discovered. The Iran-Contra affair became public in November 1986 when a Lebanese magazine exposed the secret arms sales to Iran. The revelation shocked the American people and raised serious questions about what was happening inside the Reagan administration. Investigations quickly uncovered that some officials had destroyed or hidden important documents in an attempt to cover up their actions. In response, Congress launched a full investigation, and the Tower Commission, a special review board appointed to examine the matter, also stepped in. Their work revealed widespread mismanagement, poor oversight, and illegal activities within the administration. Despite all the evidence, there was still no definitive proof that President Reagan knew every detail of the operations. It appeared that while he set broad policies, much of the planning and execution was handled by his subordinates. The scandal left a lasting mark on U.S. politics, highlighting the dangers of secret operations and the importance of accountability, transparency, and oversight in government. Reagan's response. On March 4, 1987, President Ronald Reagan finally spoke directly to the American people from the Oval Office about the Iran-Contra affair. He had stayed silent for 3 months, explaining that he didn't want to share incomplete or possibly wrong information that could make the situation even more confusing. In his address, he said, "You deserve the truth. I waited because it would have been wrong to give sketchy reports that might need corrections." In that speech, Reagan took responsibility for the actions of his administration. He admitted that his earlier statement that the United States had not traded arms for hostages was not accurate. What began as a plan to open negotiations with Iran eventually turned into actual arms for hostages deals. This was not what he had originally intended, and it went against his own policy and beliefs. Reagan's exact level of knowledge remains unclear. Some officials, like National Security Council aide Oliver North, claimed that Reagan knew about and approved parts of the operation. Notes from Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger suggest that the president was aware of potential hostage transfers and the sale of some weapons to what were called moderate elements in Iran. A Republican-led congressional report concluded that while Reagan set U.S. policy toward Nicaragua, he largely left the details to his subordinates, letting them carry out the operations as they saw fit. Impact on Reagan and the U.S. The Iran-Contra scandal hit President Reagan hard at home. His approval ratings dropped dramatically, falling from 67% to just 46%. At the time, this was the largest single drop in presidential approval in U.S. history. Americans were shocked and worried about how much their government had acted in secret. The scandal also hurt the United States on the international stage. Critics argued that secretly negotiating with Iran and Hezbollah sent the wrong message to the world. It suggested that taking hostages could be an effective way to pressure the U.S. into making deals. In Iran, Mehdi Hashemi, the man who leaked information about the scandal, was executed in 1987 under circumstances that many found suspicious, even though his official charges were unrelated. Years later, in 1994, Reagan revealed he had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Some historians have suggested that his declining health may have affected how he managed the Iran-Contra situation, adding another layer of complexity to the scandal. Legal consequences and indictments. After the Iran-Contra affair came to light, many officials faced legal consequences for their actions. Caspar Weinberger, the Secretary of Defense, was indicted for perjury and obstruction of justice, but was later pardoned by President George H.W. Bush. Robert McFarlane and Elliott Abrams, both involved in withholding evidence, were convicted, received probation, and were eventually pardoned as well. Other key figures, including Alan Fears, Claire George, and Dwayne Claridge, were also charged or convicted but later received pardons. Oliver North, a National Security Council aide, was convicted on multiple charges, but his convictions were overturned on appeal. John Poindexter, Reagan's national security advisor, faced similar reversals. Some others, like Richard Secord, Albert Hakim, and Thomas Kleins, pleaded guilty or were convicted, receiving fines, probation, or short prison sentences. Fawn Hall and Jonathan Royster, who helped with documents, were granted immunity in exchange for their testimony. Independent counsel Lawrence Walsh investigated dozens of officials but chose not to retry North or Poindexter. George Bush's role? Vice President George H.W. Bush said he was out of the loop and didn't know much about the Iran-Contra operations. However, later released diary entries showed he was aware of some details, which contradicted his public claims and raised questions about how much he really knew at the time. International involvement. After the Iran-Contra affair was exposed, it came out that Taiwan secretly helped the Contras with military support. Taiwanese officials and organizations played a role in sending aid. showing that the scandal wasn't just a U.S. issue, it had international involvement that complicated the situation even more. Pardons by George H.W. Bush. On December 24, 1992, President George H.W. Bush pardoned 5 officials involved in the Iran-Contra affair: Elliott Abrams, Dwayne Claridge, Alan Fears, Claire George, and Robert McFarlane. He also pardoned Caspar Weinberger, who had not yet faced trial. These pardons were controversial. Lawrence Walsh, the independent counsel who led the investigation, criticized Bush's decision. He suggested that the pardons might have been intended to prevent new evidence from coming out that could implicate Bush or other senior officials. The move sparked debate about accountability and whether justice had truly been served in the scandal. Modern interpretations. Today, the Iran-Contra affair is often called an example of post-truth politics. Scholars like Malcolm Byrne point out how Reagan's administration used secrecy, lies, and cover-ups to protect itself. The scandal showed how power and political survival were placed above honesty, transparency, and accountability in government decisions. Reports and documentation. Congress held extensive hearings on the Iran-Contra affair, producing the Joint Committee Report and additional minority reports. President Reagan also appointed the Tower Commission, which investigated and published its findings. Independent counsel Lawrence Walsh released 4 interim reports and a final report. Today, all these documents are preserved at the National Archives, offering the public a detailed record of one of America's most complex political scandals. Why it matters. The Iran-Contra affair revealed a serious clash between the presidency and Congress over foreign policy and funding. It showed how far officials could act in secret and raised important questions about law, ethics, and accountability. Even today, it serves as a warning. Secrecy without oversight can let even top leaders break the law. What can we learn from the Iran-Contra affair? It shows us that power without accountability can lead to serious problems. Even presidents and top officials can get caught in secret deals that have long-lasting effects. While President Reagan survived politically, the scandal left a mark on U.S. history. It shaped how people think about presidential power, ethics, and transparency. So, the next time you hear about a government scandal, ask yourself, who really knows what's going on behind closed doors? Are our leaders being held accountable? If you found this story interesting, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to History Untold for more videos that uncover the hidden side of history.